Hello, friends, and welcome back to the College Football Early Line Look Ahead Show. I am Thor Nystrom, joined by Eric Foton. Chris Welsh is out today, so Foton and I are students without a teacher. We're going to be shooting spitballs and hopefully giving you guys out some winners. Foton, very, very fun weekend of college football that we just got out of. What were your biggest takeaways?
Oh, geez. Biggest takeaways are USC, Washington. Where is the defense? I mean, we always knew that the Grinch was busy. He should have been stealing Christmas as opposed to calling defenses. But, I mean, Washington, too. You can't say enough about how vulnerable I think this team looks with them playing Utah, Oregon State, and Wazoo coming up. I mean, I think they're vulnerable and could possibly dump one of those three games to ruin the magical season for the Huskies.
Well, yeah, Mr. Grinch is going to have plenty more time for Christmas, isn't he? He's going to have plenty of time for Christmas shopping after he got fired here this afternoon on Sunday as we record. Very finally interesting there.
Tarmac treatment. We finally gave him the Kiffin tarmac treatment. They completely justified.
Finally did, yeah, and we'll get more into the Alex Grinch firing here as we go, but let's dive right into the card here for next week, and like I said, hopefully give out some winners, get some early bets that people can get in on, get some line value and whatnot. We'll start out with a weekday game here, Virginia and Louisville, showing a live line here of Louisville minus 18.5. What are you seeing in the market on this one, Foton?
Well, first off, Thor, as anybody from the region would tell you, it's Louisville.
Not
Louisville, it's Louisville.
I'm from up north, Foton. I got a tough time with that pronunciation.
Okay, fair enough. But with that line, gosh, we got an open at 17.5, with obviously Louisville as the favorite since they are hosting, and they destroyed Virginia Tech this week. But it opened up the total at 46.5 with a notable move to 51.5 in short order. And I think a lot of that has to do with, we expected Jawar Jordan, their all-conference caliber running back, to be injured. He played. James Thrash was out. He didn't play, but it didn't even matter. I mean, Virginia Tech could do nothing against that Louisville defense. And if you look at, they're playing Virginia, they didn't look too good, obviously, this past week. And they lost their quarterback, the unpredictable Tony Muskett. You don't know what he's going to be, but he's always interesting. In comes Anthony Coheed and Calandria. There's one for you prog rockers out
that's
there
pretty good.
From the 90s and early aughts. Thank you very much. And it just simply did not have the same efficacy. I think that that accounts for the tick up in both the total and for this line. I'm interested to hear what you think about the 18.5 where it currently sits.
Well, first, would you mind telling the people the story of Scott Bell in the 50-team league as far as starting Tony Muskett? I feel like we need to immortalize that story of starting Tony Muskett in the 50-team league.
Well, I didn't get a chance to look at it. He started Tony Muskett this week.
So, okay, I'll tell the people. Scott Bell Scott Bell works for the Dallas Morning News. We had the 50-team first round of the playoffs this past weekend. Scott Bell needed an emergency starting quarterback to start, so he ends up signing Tony Muskett, the Virginia starting quarterback, on Friday off the waiver wire to plug into his lineup. He ends up losing his game by a fraction of a point, by like 0.2 points or whatever. Tony Muskett gets knocked out of the game against Georgia Tech on the first drive, but not before he turned the ball over and had negative, a point or whatever. If Bell had just started nobody, he would have won his game. But because he started Muskett, he got sacked. I'm sorry. So it wasn't the turnover point. It was that he had negative, a negative 8 yards rushing or whatever. Yeah. So the fractional negative point of Muskett got Bell the loss. Sorry, Mister. I also lost in the first round of the 50-teamer playoffs. So we both got to score it out. But tough times for Virginia as a whole on that one. But yeah, Louisville playing good ball, and that defense playing very well. They didn't even need Plummer in that game. even the banged up guys like you were mentioning playing really well. My line on that game, you were alluding to it before, and I'm just going to say the Cardinals for Foton because I'm going to stay away from the pronunciation, is Cardinals minus 20.7 at home in that one. And Foton, as you know, that stadium during those weeknight games gets rocking. This Virginia team going there, especially if they have to start that true freshman quarterback. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that proposition. You got to go there. And like you're mentioning, the Cardinals defense playing very well now. I don't know about that one. For me, that one would be Cardinals or pass.
You can't. I don't see how you take Virginia here on the road. Freshman quarterback. He actually scored a touchdown on the first drive he led, and then proceeded to do, next to nothing for the rest of that game. Dangerous spot here. I don't see how you can take Virginia.
Dangerous spot, yeah. And the Cardinals moving in on what's looking to be now special season. Mr. Brahman is homecoming. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Next game here, we got a marquee one. Michigan traveling to Penn State. Can Penn State play spoilers? I know there's a lot of coaches around the country that would love Penn State to rise up here and knock Michigan off. Penn State at home, live in the market here as we record early Sunday evening, plus 5.5 at home. What are you seeing with this one, Foton?
Yeah, this is another fairly heavy mover. This opened at -5, which is, it opened at 7 on FanDuel, opened at 5 on Circa. We're currently sitting at 5.5. But in addition to that, so you have variance just between the books. But in addition, opened up at 48.5 on Circa for a total. That's down to 44.5 on FanDuel. That's kind of more indicative of what you're seeing in the non-Vegas market. That's a 4-point differential in terms of that. And it just goes to show where I don't think the market believes that Penn State can score on this Michigan defense. I think they're looking at what they did against Ohio State, only put up 12 points against the Buckeyes, and that was another low-scoring affair. I think that's kind of what the reaction is that we're looking at from just the open to where we sit now at the record time.
Yeah, for sure. My line on this game is Michigan minus 3.6. But yeah, that's the big question for us. You hit on it. Can Penn State's offense score whatsoever on Michigan's defense? And then, of course, the question on the other side is Michigan playing a real opponent this time.
Finally.
What is going to happen? And I know some other people are like, well, Thor, say the other question, which is Michigan playing a real opponent without getting their signs in advance. So we'll have to see, right? And Michigan, Penn State, I will give them credit. Last week playing Maryland, you're like, Penn State they'd had the couple dud performances in a row, and then they're going on the road to Maryland. You're like, what are they going to do in this one? It looked like a spot where potentially they could get picked off and upset, and maybe the season's going to go down the drain here. They came out and walloped Maryland in a spot for Maryland that profiled as the revenge spot of all time. Baby Tua has not played well against Penn State. Maryland has not played well against Penn State in the past. Penn State was a little bit banged up, and that's, you have to monitor some of the injury reports from Penn State this week because of that. That'll be important to check on some of those key players that were down or dinged up for them. But Penn State rose up off the mat. That was something you wanted to see heading into this game, especially it being the look-ahead spot with Michigan on deck. So I like to see that. And of course, Penn State has the awesome defense as well to counteract Michigan's offense. Michigan got to rise up here in competition. Penn State's already played good teams up till now. So, we'll have to see. Penn State has played the good competition, whereas Michigan hasn't. My system says that there's a little bit of line value on Penn State. You go through the key number of 4. This is going to be a low-scoring game. You have that total in the low 40s. My early lean in this game would be on Penn State and what I expect to be a low-scoring game, but we're definitely going to be digging into this one more as the week goes on. It's not an early week bet for me because I need to dig into specifically the injury reports in this game. I want to see who is active on both teams and what's the status of those guys and whatnot. But this is going to be a very interesting game to dig into this week.
Absolutely. And when it comes to the injury reports, too, I will actually be at Penn State Michigan at Penn State. I will be on the field, and I will be looking forward to it as much as possible. Obviously we have to do the show. It's a noon kick. I'll be doing from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. my live show, but I'm going to try to get out there as soon as possible to see who is out there, who is dressed, and who is on the field to the best of my ability to do that reporting. Because as we all know, we can't rely on local beat reporters to tell us the truth.
For sure. Yeah, they're the megaphones for the coaches. They just
That's it.
relay exactly what they're telling. Yeah, they're not out there parsing anything. They're just telling you, yeah, relaying. Moving to the SEC now, Alabama. Impressive performance by Alabama. Alabama, they started out the season exactly how I thought they were going to be. I was pessimistic about them over the summer. Foton, as you know, we met up in Canton in August, but they have the coaching job has been fabulous. Ever since mid to late September. The South Florida game after that was sort of the come to Jesus moment. And Milroe, you got to tip your hat to the kid. I never thought in his entire career he was going to get to the point of where he is right now, right? Like the running and the athleticism for that kid, it speaks for itself. The arm and the pocket presence and stuff like that, it's every week it goes up and up and up. I thought Jalen Milroe was going to play in the NFL. I didn't think it was going to be at the quarterback position.
Right.
Rashawn
Johnson plan, in other words. Yes,
exactly.
The switch.
I was banging the drum for a position switch. Jalen Milroe is going to play in the NFL, and it is going to be a quarterback. And if he keeps progressing like this, it is going to be in a lot higher round than I was initially anticipating, because he has both the crazy running utility. He also has, again, a shocking amount of pocket presence. He plays behind that sieve of an offensive line, and there's always guys flying around him and whatnot. And he keeps his head about him and whatnot. He doesn't allow he doesn't convert the pressures into sacks, on his own accord, whatnot. And the ability to test the defense down the field and drop the balls into buckets, stuff like that, has been extremely impressive this year. He's going to have to keep working on the intermediate accuracy, different stuff like that, of course. But the progress has been very impressive so far. Alabama was a bit aided last night we have to say it, by the Jaden Daniels injury. Everything like that allowed them to pull away at the end there by a couple touchdowns. Now Alabama, coming off that huge win, they turn around. They're traveling to Kentucky this coming Saturday. Right now in the market, we have a line in this game, Foton, and some of these lines are, even as we talk, they're toggling. Alabama right now, I'm seeing 10.5 point favorite at Kentucky. What are you seeing with this one?
Yeah, this is actually, it not only was the 10.5, it opened at 12 on Circa, the sharpest sportsbook in the world. But the total that they opened at 51.5, currently down to 47. You can find this, maybe a couple 46.5s if you go and look for it. And I think that really speaks more to what we're getting out of Kentucky and Devin Leary, as opposed to what we're getting out of Alabama. Because like you said, last night, LSU's defense has been much maligned and deservedly so. But, Jalen Milroe entered that game as with the worst 36.5% pressure to sack rate in the entire Power 5. And he looked magnificent. Like you said, navigating the pocket, resetting his eyes. He missed Isaiah Bond on a surefire touchdown down the sidelines after he broke the pocket. But he just made up for it and ran, because both him and Daniels went, over 150 yards each on the rushing side. But Milroe is built, like you said, he's built like Jaquinda Jackson. He's built like Rashawn Johnson, two of the more recent QB to running back conversions. He's jacked. Jalen Milroe, on the other side, Jaden Daniels, he's about $180, $185. I saw him this year. He was one of the counselors at the Elite 11 camp in Redondo Beach for the Elite 11 finals. And it's noticeable how skinny he is. If you're going to run your quarterback that much in the teeth of Alabama's defense, that's what you're going to get. Milroe is jiggity jacked. And he was able to do it. And he was able to do it all day long with no problems, despite the fact the previous two games, he was in negative rushing yardage territory. It's like Saban was saving him for when they needed to really break out that game script. And they did against LSU. I don't see a reason why they wouldn't do it again at Kentucky. Another like a slow-moving team doesn't want to go and whip the ball around if they don't have to, or put themselves into danger with a mediocre quarterback with a slightly below average arm in Devin Leary. So this is a dangerous spot for Kentucky, even on the road. If Alabama can continue to do what they did against LSU, it's going to be a long day for the Wildcats.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on here. Devin Leary's status. He got poked in the eye or something in his eye. You know, there was an eye issue in the game, Kentucky game yesterday. So something to keep an forgive the pun, something to keep an eye on there. I have not seen an update on that one. He left the game briefly in the third quarter yesterday. So we'll see. You know, he was in the injury tent for a bit, and he did come back, but we'll have to see. You know, between the there was a shoulder thing and then the eye thing. So we'll have to see. I would anticipate that he's going to be fine for this game, but that is something to check on because there was a couple minor scares as far as that thing goes. But assuming that Leary's fine, stuff like that. My line is right where Vegas is on this one. Depending on the book you're looking at right now, we're either at 10.5 or 11. My line on this game is Alabama minus 10.6. So I'm right there. Alabama coming out the big win. Now you go on the road. This would not be a bet for me right now. Foton, you mentioned Kentucky. They're going to try to play physical. They're going to slow the tempo down. What is Alabama's prerogative in this one? They are going to try to run a little bit more, different stuff like that. We'll see how it goes. It would not be an early week bet for me. As far as the strategy yesterday, I am still upset that the Milroe overpassing did not get there, and it was a freebie. But then LSU was just like, "Hey, Jalen, take as many yards as you want running. Like, yeah, just go ahead." And so, yeah, I mean, like some of those freebie passes, like you were mentioning, Milroe's like, "Oh no, I'll just take the free 30 yards that is right in front of me." Appreciate it, LSU defense. We definitely got it back with the over. And then, I was laying the 3 with Bama, so I'm not going to complain too much. But I think Milroe finished like 10 yards beneath that, his over in passing. And there so often he saw a receiver right in front of him, but he's like, no, I'll just sprint past everybody because it's anyway.
Because he's probably better in the open field than the receiver he's throwing to. He's certainly going to weigh more. He's like 225, 230. Like good luck to the secondary tackling Milroe there. He's just blowing past people.
Sure is. Yeah. And again, kudos to him. Kudos to Alabama's staff, and LSU's defense just could not be every single week. It just opens your eyes as to how bad they are. Moving to our next one, first Pac-12 game we're going to discuss today. Arizona traveling to Colorado. Line in this one, Arizona. We were just under 10. I'm showing 10 right now. Arizona laying 10 at Colorado. Arizona, a team streaking, opening people's eyes. They UCLA, a team, Chip Kelly in the past, a finesse guy, a flash guy. UCLA earlier this season playing bully ball on people with the defense, the physical run game, Carson Steele, the Tim Riggins kid they got, the tackle breaker, whatnot. And Arizona was like, no, actually, we're going to bully you. And they did for 4 quarters. UCLA wanted no part of that one. They were like, okay, you win, uncle. And so and now Arizona going to go in and play this finesse Colorado team. We'll see how that one goes. What are you seeing with this one? Now I'm seeing this line just toggle back down to 9.5 as we're sitting here live. What are you seeing in the market, Foton? Where has this one been moving throughout the day? What's your analysis on this one?
Yeah, the line's been fairly static. It's been pretty even. Opens up at 57.5 on the total, down to 55.5. I mean, surprisingly ticking down. Probably has to do with Shedeur. I'm actually a little surprised we haven't got more movement. Opened up at 9.5, like you said. It was at 9. You said it's ticking back up to 9.5, and I think we're going to see it continue to go up. Shedeur, apparently he's injured. He
looked like Kellen Winslow Sr. out there yesterday.
It was
like he was going to have to get carried off. Numerous times I was like, okay, that's the shot that ends it. And then they would like pick him back up. And, it was like that. Remember the game at Marshall with Byron Leftwich where, he was limping and they would have to carry him down the field when they would get a long pass? Yes. That was like Shedeur. You're just getting knocked around. He's clearly injured.
Clearly, and that a lot of that stemmed from the previous game where they played UCLA and the Leatu and the Brothers of Destruction on the edge along with Leatu. They sacked him 7 times 2 weeks ago. I was actually at that game as well during my West Coast swing, and it was a 4-alarm fire drill every single pass attempt. And the theory was, as we all know, by demoting Sean Lewis, which is a stroke of genius on Deion's part. Somehow the offense didn't improve without Sean Lewis at the helm. Go figure. And inserting Shermer as the new play caller, the theory was, well, maybe they'll try to run the ball more. Well, you don't have an offensive line. And you've got 180-pound Dylan Edwards back there. You've got the hanky-panky man, Anthony Hankerson, who is just a blank. He's just a guy. And they ran the ball like 12 times last game. They didn't take the heat off of Shedeur at all after he got mauled against UCLA. I watched it in person. It was uncomfortable. He's injured. He was injured before. He took a shot to play at halftime for UCLA. He comes out. He can barely stand. I mean, I think if you throw him out there against Arizona, who, as we discussed, I mean, they're rolling right now. They look awesome against Oregon State. You're going to go and expose them to that. It's under 10 points. Like I can't get into that. And plus, you throw in the poor coaching from Deion at the end of the first half, right? Colorado, Oregon State, all they had to do, right? They're on like the 3-yard line. All they have to do is run the ball 3 times with 30 seconds left, and it's a 7-3 game heading into the locker room. Done. They don't have to do anything. Instead, they come out and throw the ball twice, stopping the clock. Then they run it on 3rd down for some reason, which Oregon State just goes, Jonathan Smith, timeout, get the ball back. 15 seconds later, they score down 14-3. It's like, to say that was an unforced error is a drastic understatement. I mean, they just can't get out of their own way. And with Arizona rolling, Noah Fifita. I mean, can you believe Teteroa McMillan and Noah Fifita played at the same high school at the same time? I mean, what did that look like in Southern California? Jed Fish, head coach of Arizona, just raiding Southern California for quality prospects. That team is rolling right now. I could not take Colorado in this position. I think it's a great deal right now, and it's going to climb over 10.
Yeah, same. My line's right around where it is right now, being 9.5. Mine's 9.3, but I would not advocate for taking Colorado here.
Shedeur. Does he play this week?
Exactly.
Does he stay in the game this week?
Exactly. And credit to Shedeur for that is a tough kid. I know that there's, he's taking a lot of crap. Coach Prime's taking a lot of crap. And, maybe, some people argue that they brought it on themselves because they're ostentatious. They talk a lot. But they were trying to bring attention to a 1-11 program that was one of the worst Power 5 programs that we had ever seen before. And they were trying to attract talent to help themselves out. Forgive them. For someone like that, like this kid has been beat up to heck this year. And he, again, like he's very clearly playing through injuries behind what is now one of the worst Power 5 offensive lines, objectively. Yeah. And he's stranded out there. They're playing in these empty sets or, the 4 wide, whatever. They're not keeping anyone back to help them. And, they're passing 75% of the time. And these defenses are just teeing off on him. You're just being, sacked over and over again or hit over and over again when he gets the ball out, whatnot. And the kid stays back there, keeps his eyes downfield, and he will take a shot to unload the ball. Extremely tough kid. So I give him credit, but this is going to be a slog to get to the end of the season. And, the slog continues on Saturday. Arizona, we were talking about this over the weekend, my show with Mike Farrell. The thing that impresses me the most about the Jed Fish thing, when it was going on at the beginning, what we talked about was the flashy stuff, getting Delora, getting the skill guys. You got Cowing, you bring in Wiley, McMillan. We talked a lot about that one, right? You 5-star kid. Oh my gosh. What he did in the trenches, though, it didn't get as much ink in the moment, right? He's got all kinds of NFL guys on both trenches. Like you just sort of like wake up to this fact of like, oh my gosh, like Arizona has, one of the better offensive lines and defensive lines in the Pac-12. Like, when did this happen? Right. And their skill guys are really, really good. And then you all of a sudden you realize like, oh my God, like their skill position guys are some of the best in the Pac-12. Fafita may be one of the better quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and even if he got injured, Delore is pretty good. And then their trenches are, and is Jed Fish one of the better coaches in the Pac-12? And then you're thinking all of a sudden, is this Arizona team becoming or is it one of the better Pac-12 teams? We saw it play with USC. Maybe it should have beaten USC. One of the only coaching mistakes that Jed Fish made all season, should have gone for 2. And I think, against USC in that overtime, I bet Jed Fish stays up at night thinking about that one. They lost the 2 games in overtime. If those had gone different, this could have been an entirely different season. I think that Arizona is even better than their record indicates. This Arizona team is so good that the UCLA win, some of these wins they've had over good teams are no fluke. They beat the hell out of that UCLA team. That UCLA team wanted no part of them. It's been no different.
Nobody's treated UCLA that way all season. That's the first time I've seen them take it like that. Because their defense was a top 15 unit heading into the game. And Arizona exposed them.
Took it to him. Yeah. Carson Steele, a guy, UCLA is the team that dominates the line of scrimmage, right? I mean, They impose their will on other teams. Not in that game. Not in that game. They got run over. And I think it's coming here too. That's
their QBs too. UCLA, their line was getting overrun as opposed to what they did to Colorado. Garbers was out. Dante Moore, their 5-star freshman, comes in. He got hurt. Like, they were all over UCLA all game. No running lanes. I think, Steele had under 40 yards rushing. I want to say his line was set at 76.5, which I advocated the under on my show, because the running was on the wall. Can't say enough about Arizona. And this is a team, Kevin Sumlin was running this team 3 years ago. You don't get a bigger upgrade in coaching than Kevin Sumlin to Jed Fish, and the proof is in the pudding.
Exactly. You almost started to feel bad for Carson Steele. Maybe some blue steel for a time.
Some blue steel.
With that, everyone out there, download the free Betting Pros app for iOS and Android. Follow experts, top-rated bettors, and bettors on hot streaks. Get instant notifications when new bets or plays. Customize your notifications by sport so you only receive alerts for bets that interest you. You can limit alerts so you get only historically ROI positive markets of the bettors that you follow. To take advantage of these features and more, download the Betting Pros app by visiting bettingpros.com/apps or search Betting Pros in the App Store. All right, Foton, let's hit a few more before we get out of here. Let's stay in the Pac-12. Utah at Washington next Saturday. Line we got on this one, Washington coming off that win, a 10-point win against USC Saturday night. Washington, it was a 10 earlier today. I think this one is toggled down to 9. Washington taking some money here Sunday afternoon. So Washington laying 9 at home in Seattle this coming Saturday. What are you seeing in the market on this one, Foton?
Yeah, as discussed, that's moved down from 9. And actually, in terms of circuit, that opened up at 10.5 at 53.5. It stayed pretty much stagnant in terms of the, where we're at for where FanDuel opened. So it had 2 different openings. You had Vegas, 10.5. You had FanDuel opened at 9. It kind of toggled around in terms of, up until record time to where, like you said, it's settled back down to 9 at this point after going up a little bit. But the total, I was kind of surprised where it went from 57.5 down to 53.5. A real discrepancy between Vegas and the national books, where it didn't move much from FanDuel, but there's a 4-point differential from the two, giving you some arbitrage opportunities, at least on the open. Utah, for the first time all year, we got an offensive explosion out of them. They ran 352 yards on the ground. They went for just a classic. Utah wanting to bowl you over and just suffocate you. And they did. You got 3 touchdowns out of their neophyte quarterback. We will not be seeing Cam Rising. That was by far, I would say, the best offensive performance they've had all year. And they needed it after how they looked against Oregon last week. They needed to get their groove back a little bit. Now, going up there against either going to Husky Stadium, going to Washington, I'm curious to see, as we discussed, this Washington defense has shown cracks. You can definitely run on them. The USC didn't even have Marshawn Lloyd. Didn't matter. Austin Jones still went and was running no problem. They had no problem on doing what they needed to against that defensive line. I'm curious to see if Utah can emulate that and impose their will, on the ground. But what's going to happen when they need to pass? That Washington isn't as bad. They're actually okay in terms of their pass defense. What's going to happen when they have to put the ball in the air? That's the real question for me in this game.
Yeah, I know Michael Penix has struggled a little bit in recent weeks, but he has thrown better than Arizona State quarterback Cam Scatterbo did on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah. Cam Scatterbo, another under. Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Mega under.
Yeah,
on his rushing yards. But yeah, he had to do something. Trent Bourget, he was out after 5 passes. I mean, his replacement was a horror show. It was a disaster for Arizona State on all levels of that game. That was bad news.
Yeah, Jacob Conover was so bad that they were like, they gave him the old hook. It was like Broadway with the long hook out of there, and then they literally put in Cam Scatterbo to play quarterback, and then the coach after the game, Dillingham, was like, "Yeah, Cam's our 5th string quarterback," so we had to put him in. They actually put Bourget back in for a little bit. It was clearly injured, but they were like, we can't have any more of Jacob Conover. But then
Jacob
they were like,
turnover, you mean Jacob Turnover is what I call him.
Oh, Jacob Turnover. Yeah. I like it. Yeah. In this one, so, you have a couple different things going on where Utah obviously is a better team at home than they are on the road. So, you have to bake that in. Obviously, Washington is a better home team than they are on the road. So, that skews towards Washington. But you were mentioning the Washington defense thing. Washington's pass defense is way, way, way better than its run defense. So that is a data point decidedly in Utah's advantage, that they would prefer a team skewed that way. Washington's run defense, 124th rushing success rate, 130th opportunity rate, 131st in stuff rate. Washington's pass defense way better, 49th success rate, 32nd marginal explosiveness, etc. So
6.2 yards per pass. That's 16th in the country heading in last week.
Yeah. So, I mean, Utah is, at least is going to just grind, right? And so we'll see how they can do that. Marshawn Lloyd, presumably very disappointed that he was inactive in that USC game because he couldn't try to match Dylan Johnson going thermonuclear on Saturday night, in that game, whatever. Because
outline dream Dylan Johnson in that game.
Yes.
Nuclear.
Yeah, I mean, both some of the shoddiest run defenses in the entire nation. That in your handicap, those are some of the key things to be looking for in this game. As far as qualitatively with the value and where is this line value like heading into the week? My line is right where Vegas is. Right now, this line at 9 is what I'm showing, like the consensus. My line is Washington minus 9.1. So I'm right there. I will not be betting this one today. I will be diving into this handicap though. Another thing I want to look into is Penix. Beginning of the season was gangbusters. Some of these recent weeks has played way down, depending on the defensive strategy. And Utah, one of the great defensive coaching staffs that we have in college football over the last 20 years. If some of these other bozo defensive coaching staffs that have been out there that have been able to figure out how to slow down Michael Penix a little bit, were able to do it. Utah presumably will be able to do it as well. So those are some of the things, that I will be considering when I head into this handicap, but not enough line value one side or the other for me to bet this one early. But I think this is going to be a fun handicap to get into this week. We'll be talking more about it later this week. Next game, Foton, Florida traveling to LSU. Live line on this one, LSU minus 13. The obvious key thing with this handicap, we'll dive right into that one right now. The status of Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels going to be starting for the Tigers. Are we going to get Garrett Nussmeier? You and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, but what do you think in this one, and what are you seeing in the market today with this game?
Yeah, we're seeing, pretty darn close in terms of the line itself. Opened at 12. Like you said, it's at 13 right now. But, the real movement, again, we're seeing a lot of these totals is really where the arbitrage opportunities have been this week. Opened at 67.5, down to 62 at time of recording on the duel. And, a lot of that, I got to think, as you mentioned, has to do with Jaden Daniels. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, when he has played, has been pretty competent. I mean, last year when it was the Max Johnson show, he took over, and he was better than Max Johnson to the point where people were wondering, is there going to be who's it going to be? Is it going to be Jaden Daniels, who was, good at times last year, wasn't as great? Or is it going to be Newsmeyer? Is he going to take him over? There was a potential QB controversy. Obviously, Jaden Daniels in mobility, he just shot past them, and it was obviously the right call because he's been phenomenal this year. But he is at least a competent signal caller who didn't transfer after losing the job, because he sees himself, after Jaden Daniels leaves because he's a senior, taking over the reins next season. So he is a competent quarterback. Obviously, with Florida, you're dealing with Graham Mertz. Eugene Wilson went nuclear.
Yeah, he sure did.
Honestly, the best. For my money, I think he's been, the best wide receiver that's a true freshman all year in any respect anywhere. And my gosh, he is explosive. So the fact that this went down is clearly on the quarterbacks. Get right spot in Baton Rouge for LSU, but again, I think he just got to sit tight and wait to see what happens on this.
Yeah, it's tough with concussion protocol, right? Like we don't know. You never know with the concussion protocol. So like you said, we'll just have to wait and see. And you drop from Daniels to Nussmeier, that's a clear downgrade, which needs to be reflected in the line. And you will see that later this week if Daniels is ruled out. You peg that one, will be 3 points, will be 3.5, 4. Like we'll have to see, but that's around where I would have it. Nussmeier is a very solid backup. So, you're not going to get crazier than that. So, some of the, last year when with the Chadwell thing, when at Coastal, when you went from McCall to Guest, like that one, you had a little bit over a touchdown. Like, and we've seen some examples of that where, you had the bigger one. It's not going to be quite that high in this case, but you are going to have a bit of a dip there. I will say, though, on LSU, we have that. Florida, though, it's not like they have a sparkling hell sheet either. Let's get into that one. Mertz is fine, but Florida's got issues on the other side. So in the last game for Florida, they play without 3 defensive starters for the whole game. Leading tackler Shamar James, defensive tackle Cam Jackson, and their defensive end Tyreek Sapp. But during the game against Arkansas, and Foton, as you know, wasn't a particularly impressive performance. A team in Arkansas that had just fired Mr. Dan Enos, their offensive coordinator, because they couldn't get out of there.
Within a week of each other. It had to happen.
Oh, of course it had to happen. But they, all season Arkansas couldn't get out of the way offensively. And then all of a sudden they, and of course a part of it was just getting rid of Dan Enos. But then they run into Florida's defense, and all of a sudden KJ Jefferson was an NFL prospect again. But, so Florida plays without those 3 defensive starters the whole game. But then during the game against Arkansas, Florida also loses linebacker Jack Pyburn and defensive end TJ Searcy in the second half. You got to monitor the status of those guys. If Florida's out all 5 of them in this one, that could be tough for them too.
Absolutely.
So
Arkansas did whatever they wanted. They had scored 3 points the game beforehand, and they went up and dropped 38 last game.
It's friggin' Mississippi State.
It isn't all Kenny Guyton at OC.
Exactly. Yeah. My line, which, take it with a grain of salt because we don't even know who's going to be playing in this game at this point. But I got LSU minus 14 right now, in the market right now, LSU minus 13. But again, very fluid right now. I baked in a slight penalty for LSU, slight penalty for Florida based on this, but very provisional. Same way I'm betting the sports books with their stuff, very provisional. And I know that the bettors out there, the people in the market that bet this stuff early on Sunday, they're doing what we call speculation betting right now, right? Like they're, is Daniels going to play? The Florida guys reading tea leaves, and then they're doing what they think might happen, and then we can come back and hit it later, based on this. Where's the value, whatnot? We'll have to see again, pay attention later this week for all that stuff. But yeah, if Daniels doesn't play, obviously you have to downgrade, but you have to keep an eye on the Florida defensive stuff as well. Staying in the SEC for Foton, Mississippi traveling to Georgia next weekend or this coming weekend. Georgia right now in the market, 11.5. We got, let me see if this one, so I'm seeing 11 right now. Georgia coming off of an impressive-ish win over Missouri, didn't cover, but that's a frisky Missouri team. And Ole Miss, they hang on at home to beat the fighting Jimbos of A&M on Saturday. What do you think about this one, Georgia against Ole Miss, and what were you seeing today in the market with this one?
Yeah, I mean, fairly tight in terms of the movement. Really wasn't much. Opened up at minus 12. As you can see, it took a tick down, and 56.5 on the total. It's now up to 58.5. I think a lot of that has to do with, look how Mississippi State just shredded Texas A&M, who had been able to slow down a couple of pretty decent offenses. But, I mean, they were no match for Jackson Dart and Trey Harris. And Trey Harris went for 200 on A&M. And, Jackson Dart, the guy deserves a lot of credit. They bring in Spencer Sanders, not Shedeur, but Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. And all right, well, maybe we can light a fire under this guy, and we'll see what we got with Spencer Sanders. I mean, anybody who's watched Spencer Sanders know that was a long shot to have him beat out Jackson Dart. But they also brought in Walker Howard from LSU, who's a borderline 5-star recruit, who it's his second year, and an upgraded QB room. Didn't matter. Jackson Dart has fulfilled the high, the recruiting billing that he had, and he was just masterful that game. I was particularly pretty high on the college fantasy front. I have many shares of Jackson Dart, and pleased to see that. But now they're going up against Georgia, but Missouri was able to hang with them reasonably. Georgia was in control of that game the whole way through. They were able to score a touchdown to kind of close it. Obviously, the backdoor cover out of Missouri, in that game. But Georgia was in control of that game. They looked pretty good. But they're playing this Mississippi offense, this is Lane. This is the Lane train pulling into the station now in Athens. I do think they're going to be able to score on them. I think that's why you see the tick up from 56.5 to 58. I don't blame that at all. I think you're going to see a pretty good back and forth. I do like the over here.
I do too. Yeah. I mean, you got the tempo on the one side with the Lane train running one of the fastest tempos in the nation. And then on the Georgia side, we've seen it ever since Brock Bowers went out, right? Like when you have Brock Bowers, you have to use him. And the way that manifested was pounding him with targets in the short to intermediate sector, right? And then they were an efficiency monster in that regard. But when Bowers, when he got injured, they've been throwing down the field way, way more. And they've been able to spotlight some of those receivers they have, and they have speed, both in the slot now.
McConkey is back.
And on the outside.
He was injured early in the season. They brought him back a little bit. Soon as Bowers went out, Ladd has been going nuts both of these last two games.
And they got Lovett, and the outside receiver, again, they got speed. And that Carson Beck kid can rip it, And so, you have all that different kind of stuff. This game profiles is over. By the way, right now I'm looking at the total right now in the market 59. My system drops 73 for Foton. 73.
You got a couple of premier signal callers, even if they don't get the national love. You see out of Drake May, out of Shedeur, out of Caleb. Both of these two guys, Dart and Beck, have tons of shares of both of them. I have Beck in every single one of my C2C leagues, I believe. And like you're saying, when you got two signal callers, you got the talent level on both sides of the offensive units. I'm in on that over.
Might have to buy a ticket. Might have to buy a ticket right when we get off this record. That number looks tasty. Moving to our
get off.
Exactly. Moving to our next one, ACC showdown in the Sunshine State. Miami traveling to Florida State. Line on this one, 14.5. Still sitting at 14.5. Florida State laying 14.5. A line that maybe for some people it feels a little bit elevated, but coming off the showing that Miami had yesterday, really rough for the old Miami Hurricanes. Tyler Van Dyke not looking great right now, and Florida
Not looking
State
healthy.
not looking healthy either. Not looking healthy. Yeah, it's been a rough go for Mr. Tyler Van Dyke for about a month here, and Florida State. They had, initially the Nard Dog and Pitt, they were, doing some things to slow down Florida State for what, a quarter and a half, maybe even a little bit longer.
Head and a half. Head and a half.
And Trey Benson was a little bit frustrated, and whatever. But then, Florida State got it going and they did their thing. This one in Tallahassee, like I said, 14.5. What have you been seeing with this one, Foton, and which way would you lean in this game?
Yeah, it seemed like Norvell went back to his playing days and threw in the cornrows at halftime and said, all right, enough is enough. We mean business here. But the problem is, we'll get into the line movement. Open to 52.5 and minus 13, as you mentioned. That has ticked up and over the key number of 14 and a half, which tells you kind of what you need to know with how everybody, the market is reacting. Stuck, it's only 51.5 or so. So the total has stayed relatively stagnant, but both these teams have injury issues. As discussed with Miami, I watched both the previous Miami games heading into this week and watched Van Dyke because I'm a big proponent of Van Dyke. I think he has a huge arm. He's not afraid to test windows. And if you watched him last game, he threw a couple of interceptions, one in particular where he had a guy streaking down the sidelines and he simply underthrew it. And it wasn't he doesn't have the velocity. He's not hitting those, outside the number throws like I've seen him do for when he was healthy, pretty much at 21. Like when he's healthy, he rips it. That is not the case. Way too many floaters out of Van Dyke, and it really exposed itself this past week. And on the side, Florida State, no Johnny Wilson. Surprise DNP out of Keon Coleman. I mean, where did that come from? No word of that all year, week long. So they had to rely a little bit more, like you said, on the running game, Toafili and Trey Benson. Trey Benson finally ripped one off and got his touchdown. Like you said, it wasn't much at halftime. The key offensive injuries are what I'm concerned about here in this game. And I tell you, I'm leaning under based on that because Miami's defense is pretty good. Florida State Jared Verse company is stout. I don't know how Miami's going to move the ball particularly well against them, given the kind of limitations. If you look at Van Dyke, I guess he had, the rumor is he had a hand injury, but he's got a knee brace that is, gigantic. It's taped. It's a big brace, everything, and it's on his plant leg. That's a problem against this defense.
Yeah, I'll keep my comment short because you basically hit everything. Like the Florida State receiving core is banged up. The Florida State running game on again, off again. You and I love Benson. We love Benson. But it's sort of been on again, off again. And if Miami's able to load up, because, we'll have to see with Wilson, with Coleman, and then the other kid was out as well, Hakeem Williams. We'll have to see if they get them back. But if they don't, who's Florida State? Where they just going to throw everything to Bell? So it could neuter that. They'll be able to load up against Benson and Toafili, whatnot. So it's going to suppress the scoring. I ain't afraid of Miami's offense at all for the reasons that you were stating. Van Dyke does not look well. The line is, to me, more or less fair because of that. My line's just slightly over that Florida State 15.3, not over a key number. There's the health things like we're mentioning. I would lean the under for all the reasons that you're stating because of the health stuff, but that's something to monitor for both the over-under and the side as we go throughout the week before you bet this thing. Just a couple more, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Tennessee, Foton traveling to Missouri. Line in this one, just over a pick 'em in this one. Right now in the market, this one been going, we got Tennessee laying 1.5 is what we're seeing right now in the market at Missouri. What have you been seeing with this one, Foton? Which way would you lean early in the week?
Yeah, pretty close. Open at 1, it's at 1.5. It's depending on where you go. It's pretty darn close to that. It has ticked up. Open at 57.5 on the total, up to 59.5. And with Tennessee for the first half of the season, they were the opposite of the 2022 Tennessee team that was just chucking and ducking. Like they were playing a much more conservative brand of football. Riding Jalen Wright, who came into the year as sort of the co-starter, maybe the 1B to Jabari Small's 1A. He has taken that over. They've really leaned on the running game and a pretty good defense. That changed against Kentucky because the aforementioned Devin Leary went out and chucked for over 300 yards against them. And that is just not what Kentucky has done all season. Kind of exposed some of the cracks. And when you got this Missouri team, they're at Missouri. As I've, sung the praises of offensive coordinator Kirby Moore, formerly of Fresno State, was there the previous 2 years. He's a direct descendant of the Kalen DeBoer coaching tree, now the head coach of Washington, and has led that offensive explosion. He has really helped Missouri become more up-tempo, more efficient. Brady Cook has run that offense extremely well. Obviously, they weren't able to beat Georgia, but, I can't really knock them for that. They were the 12th team in the nation heading into that game and still put up 3 touchdowns against the Georgia defense. There's a good reason why this is ticking up. I do like the over here and a couple of teams that I think will be able to score on each other. Missouri, good defense, not a great defense. I think you're going to see some points on the board here. I like a speculative overshot at 59.5. I think it continues to go.
Yeah, my total is 62, so we would agree on that one. My side is right where we're at in Vegas. I'm at Tennessee minus 1.7. So right there, can Missouri get up off the mat after I guess a nearish miss? They played Georgia closer than certainly most of the public anticipated heading in. You miss out on that one. Now you're headed home playing this Tennessee one. Should be a closer game. Obviously, a shot here to get up off the mat. Can they? We'll have to see. Match up a little bit better in this one. But Tennessee's pass defense is up from where they were last year when they were a sieve in that area. But Georgia, elite pass defense. So we'll have to see. And Georgia was able to suppress the passing, right? Both in terms of Cook and then, tamping down on Luther Burden. So those guys should have a better game in this one. Foton, one more to break down a little bit more in depth. USC coming off the tough one against Washington on Saturday night, and their first game in the post-Alex Grinch era, traveling to Oregon. Man, the road don't get any easier for USC, does it? Oregon right now in the market, 14.5-point favorite in Eugene. Got a total in this game in the market, 73.5. So we have another profile of a shootout for the new interim defensive coordinator at USC. What's been going on with this game in the market today, and what would be your early week angle on this game?
Sure. Well, I think it's funny. The total opened to 73.5, and like you said, it's hung right there, which is kind of rare for a game of this sort of a magnitude. We've seen a lot of flip flopping, but where the movement was here is open at 17 at circa. Down at that 14.5 range right now. That's a pretty sizable move. Obviously, approaching going from key number down to key number. It just says that the market does believe in the Alex Grinch, firing or whatever have you, and that USC can score with Oregon because they haven't had a problem scoring. Obviously, as we all know, I don't need to get into that, but Oregon's defense, they've been pretty damn good too. 15th in EPA per play in terms of yards per pass, 6.3. So it's going to be a case of, can USC run the ball against this Oregon defense and try to take a little bit of the heat off of Caleb, who, bless the guy, he has been running for his life, for a good portion of the season. The offensive line hasn't done him, many great shakes in that respect, but he's just so mobile and so good. I lean that over, even though it hasn't moved, just because of the magnitude of these two offenses. And that, I don't know if you can really look at the Alex Grinch, firing and say, all right, well, all is going to be well now at USC.
Yeah, Alex Grinch getting let go today and took a lot of criticism, some of it fair, some of it not. One of it I wasn't sure about was, some people said that he wasn't consistent, but I'm not sure about that. Last year, they were 87th SP plus defense. This year, they're the 87th SP plus defense. So can you really say he wasn't consistent?
A model of consistency, you could argue.
Exactly. The two, so they're going with co-defensive coordinators in, where do we have that? Sean Nua, their defensive line coach, and Brian Odom, the linebacker coach, will be co-defensive coordinators the rest of the season. I don't really think that's going to matter. I don't really see that defense getting any better or worse. Really, what they need to do is get better players in the offseason. I think that, it's honestly what my take. It's what my take is with Brian Ferentz at Iowa. That it's not really a Brian Ferentz thing; it's a Kirk Ferentz thing. In the same way, this isn't really an Alex Grinch thing to me. It's more of a Lincoln Riley thing. Lincoln Riley needs to prioritize getting in more defenders in the portal as opposed to fetishizing all of his, the shiny offensive stuff and like whatnot when he's going out and shopping for players in the summer. And in the same way that Kirk Ferentz, it's a strategic thing of shifting, like everything with Kirk Ferentz, it's let's set up the defense to be in the best possible position, like in game, as opposed to the up. So Brian Ferentz will never play up tempo. He will never go for it on fourth down, right? Because he's not going to leave the defense stranded. Right. So he's fine doing we'll go, the three downs, and then we'll punt it back to you at the, year 40. So we'll, because we have the awesome punter and Torrey Taylor, we're going to give it to you at the 2-yard line. And then, you're going to go 3 and out. You'll give it back to us at the 40. We'll do it again. And eventually you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And, and then we'll get our points that way. It's the same thing here. Last off season, Lincoln Riley finally threw Grinch a couple bones with Bear Alexander, Mason Cobb, and then he had Bullock as well. But there needs to be a little bit more. I'm not going to go, do a whole thing of like, the whole defense of Grinch, because it's not like I thought he did like a fabulous job. But USC does need to get more talent there. This is more a thing of like USC's defense is not turning around this year because Alex Grinch is going out the door. They're going to get lit up here. In the same way that Cal got their doors blown off defensively last week.
Oh, yeah.
Foton, praise to you for your call of Bo Nix last week. Foton not only was calling for the over on Bo Nix's passing yardage this past week, and I believe, if I'm recalling correctly, I think it was 273.5 in the market on Saturday.
273 settled, yes.
But Foton was banging the table for the ladder all the way up on the outlines. The Max 285, the 295, the 305. Foton, where did Bo Nix end up finishing against Cal?
325, it was the max out in terms of his, his ladder play, his alt lines, which have been pretty profitable this year, frankly. But he ended up in the 350s. Yeah. And when it comes to, the 325, that was a plus 370 play against, as we discussed. I mean, that was coming, whether you liked it or not. There was no way that the offense was going to slow down in that particular contest, against Cal. Cal has been getting humped all season long, but they've been scoring just enough. The Latin lover, Fernando Mendoza, just enough, to be able to keep all right. And they did it perfectly. Like they were down 35 to 13, but then. You're like, oh, no, they're going to take Bo Nix out. He might only hit the 273. Oh, no. Don't worry. Cal scored 19, just enough to make him keep the foot on the gas. And that's the beauty of Cal and taking over positions against them. They can't play D, but they can do just enough, thanks to Jake Spavital on offense, to keep it interesting and to keep your overs rocking.
Great call by you there. This might be the game where Bo Nix, it's like the 92% completion, and Bucky Irving is the guy with the ladder against that USC run defense where Bucky Irving has the Dylan Johnson game, or it's like the 250 yards and 5 touchdowns.
I got Dylan Johnson. I looked at Dylan Johnson. I'm like, well, it's USC's run defense. I didn't put it out. That's on me.
And Dylan Johnson was on my bench in the 50-teamer. I'm never going to get over that. But yeah, so my line in this one is, we got 14.5 in the market. My line is Oregon minus 13.4. Is a fair line, right? I mean, especially with the things up in the air with the USC defense, they're going to have to make some adjustments there. USC, are they going to quit now? Right? I mean, everything that they wanted, with the season, that's done now. Obviously, now you take the third loss and whatnot. And Oregon, they got everything to play for, baby. You went out, Oregon, you're going to the CFP. It just is what it is. So everything is in front of Oregon. Everything is done for USC. The over is that would be it for me here. My system put out a total on this one, 86.8. Last week, 73.5 is what it is in the market. And some people out there might be like, that's ludicrous. That's stupid. My system basically put out the exact same line, the total for the USC Washington game last week. In fact, I think it was 89. And
what's 92?
Yeah. What did that one end up getting to? It was something.
Yeah.
92. Yeah.
92. I actually saw a live line during the game. I think right around halftime.
105, right?
And a half.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It blew my mind. But what are you going to do? That's how the game was trending. My gosh.
Yeah, and of course Oregon's going to get out in front here, and then USC is going to have to do the hurry up and let's just go for it and try. The only thing that could impede this thing in any way is Oregon, of course, is going to just run, right? And that's where Bucky Irving is. He's going to be it's going to be chutes and ladders for with our props with old Bucky, and then that's why Bo Nix. I don't know if it's going to be his ladder game or whatever, but that's why Bo Nix. It's going to be one of those things where it's all of his easy throws. And that's why, his completion percentage has gotten ludicrous in this system when they get ahead and it's just all these easy throws and whatever. But I'm not touching the side of that one. I do like the over for the reasons that I stated. Foton, this has been a lot of fun. It's all the time we got for today, but good times. Next week, Mr. Welsh is going to be back, but I hope we did good without the teacher in today. I hope we didn't get in trouble. The principal didn't have to be called in. At least, so we didn't get in trouble. That's Eric Foton. You can follow him at CF Foton. CF, did I say that right, Foton?
Correct.
CF,
just two F's. CF Foton. I should have picked a more, easy Twitter handle back in the day.
CF Foton on Twitter-X. Yep. I am Thor Nystrom. You can follow me at Thorku. We will see you next time next week back with Mr. Welsh. Thanks for tuning in.